The ancient guide to females?
Yes, it tells us that your talents lie elsewhere. In the kitchen, for example.
Kimiko Tohomiko has definitely gotten the least amount of attention out of all the Shaolin warriors throughout Xiaolin Showdown. Out of the 13 season 1 episodes, she only gets like 3 to 4 as her main plotline, but even those feel relatively light for what they are. Kimiko is a Japanese character in a crew full of 3 other boys. Raimundo's from Brazil, Omi is from China, and Clay is from America. Despite the fact that Clay is actually the least talking character, the fact that Kimiko sometimes loses plots to him is kind of astounding to me, honestly. But to really go back to the root of Kimiko's relationship in the series, we have to go back to her first episode, season 1, episode 3, Tangled Web.
Do girls know how to swim?
This is not the first episode she's in. All the monks were introduced in the pilot, season 1, episode 1, The Journey of 1,000 Miles. Kimiko is the character that is technologically savvy, very fashionable, but most noticed for her hot-tempered bursts, which makes a lot of sense for the 2000s. I feel like the female characters always took on the emotional part, which is kind of frustrating, especially looking back, seeing Omi, Clay, and Raimundo having a lot of emotional beats themselves. It feels like sometimes we only focus on Kimiko. I will admit, though, on the contrary, this character is actually one of the only female characters in cartoons that I've ever seen have a different outfit every single episode, along with her consistent outfit as the Shaolin monk robe. And it's true, at first I didn't believe it until you see that the Shaolin monks travel every episode, and she wears a different outfit to almost commemorate the place they're going and or the Shengang Wu's origins, which is really interesting to think a cartoon is going to pull that off.
I think Kimiko's clothing is most appropriate. She at last resembles a girl.
I found a lot of character sheets in online world showing all these outfits, but you could find them in just about every trading card from the Xiaolin Showdown trading series, a bunch of different action figures featuring some of these other styles in the Walmart bargain bin. So this all makes me wonder, was the character of Kimiko sexist? Or was the writers portraying Kimiko sexist? Or is this just a series of unfortunate stereotypes lined up a little too perfectly? I honestly think it's somewhere in the middle of all of them. So in Tangled Web, we start out with a Xiaolin showdown between Kimiko and Jack Spicer, one of the first Xiaolin showdowns we see her in general. And it's fun because it starts a trend in this episode where we get to see her do more than one, so sit tight. Jack Spicer causes her to lose because of his jet butsu, and he wins the monkey staff, which is not surprising. He's gonna have that for the rest of the series. No note needed to take here. Her losing because of her hot-headedness is a common theme throughout not only this episode, but this show. She just can't control her temper, which is not that surprising for a teenager. I mean, why would we be surprised? So then they head out to Ireland to get the next Shengang Wu on a dojo boat. Yeah, I guess he has the ability to transform into a boat, as well as a dragon of many sizes.
She has to replace the one she just lost. Sorry, I mean the 2 she just lost.
Omi gets to Kimiko really bad because he starts talking about what women should be doing, and it is just, this is the scene that pretty much describes this entire video on YouTube. Omi being sexist is so real because obviously he lived as a monk on his own with just Master Feng for his whole life, so species like girls are probably very confusing for him. Obviously this triggers her a lot. She gets the tangled web comb from the ocean, which is actually pretty admirable, but then Omi makes the connection that of course women need to have combs, which is kinda crazy, but hey, I guess that's just how the episode's going. Then back at training, her frustration only strengthens when she can't use this immediately.
I don't think she's using it right.
Master Feng tells her that the Shengang Wu only really works if you can concentrate and focus, which is actually the opposite of what she's able to do. She thinks that all these distractions are enough of an excuse to kind of get away with her short temper, but she continuously tries to be the bigger person, which is so much harder. Master Feng assigns her to pour tea from a giant kettle into a bunch of miniature cups, which is kind of like a practice in this patience scenario. And of course, having the boys enter eating all of the stuff they found in her room, which, by the way, Omi, you cannot be eating lipstick. This is dangerous.
I am very surprised Kimiko can lift such a heavy pot with her delicate female arms. What?
It just proves that she's not ready for this ultimate focus, therefore not really able to use the Tangle webcomb, this Shengang Wu she just won. Very frustrating. Jack doesn't really have a subplot in this episode. He's the main villain, just looking for Shengang Wu. I mean, he has the monkey staff. That's essentially his plot of the episode. He just gets too into being a monkey, and Wu Ya really bothers him to be like, hey, like, do your due diligence and actually focus on getting more Shengang Wu. Like, stop getting all stuck up in your egotistical phases.
The longer you hold it, the more monkey-like you will become.
I don't see it.
Which is kind of a common reoccurrence for him, but in this episode it's perfect to leave him out of the main plot because it is between Kimiko and herself, really, which is kind of metaphorical when you think about it. This is one of the first episodes I've ever seen of this show, and it really left an impression on me, seeing Kimiko have to overcome her own obstacles in order to work in the bigger part of a team is so interesting, and I feel like really encapsulates the best parts of this show. Throughout the episode, just because of Omi's one remark, we assume that Raimundo and Clay are also kind of sexist, but really they're just trying to stay out of it the whole plot and, like, get out of Kimiko's way. Which I feel like is kind of fair. I mean, definitely not getting involved, but also, like, chiming in when it's time to teach Omi about girls, but they don't seem to be, like, playing an active role in helping turn around the stereotype, which is kind of annoying. And in this episode, we have the introduction of my favorite Shengang Wu, the Golden Tiger Claws. These claws that allow you to transport you anywhere in the earth, and it's so cool to think about. I love these. Wu Ya warns Jack that this is one of the most important Shengang Wu, and we find out why later. So it's kind of cool that it ties into Kimiko's episode. Like, you really have to pay attention to know what's going on. And after the whole tea kettle incident, Kimiko kind of turns around her temper and is able to manage it a lot better, as opposed to a normal TV cartoon where it'd be like a lot of trial and tribulations between this girl not being able to handle her emotions. But she cleans up her act pretty quickly, and this happens a lot in the first season. Like, Raimundo has an entire episode where he is underutilized, so the monks kind of bother him about it until he learns how to do it, and then kind of just shows off his end of the bargain. In a show about teamwork, having these individual episodes being focused on individual characters and their goals really strengthens the show in a way you wouldn't expect. With just barely enough lore into Kimiko's backstory, we learn that the monks have to get to the Emperor's palace and can't get in because they don't have a way of doing so, so she just calls her father, who's able to get her in.
They don't just let anybody in there. We need connections.
Oh, no worries. I'll call my dad.
Uh-huh.
Moshi Moshi, Papa. Kimiko. Yeah, I need a few invites to the Emperor's palace.
Well,
We're in, but there's a catch.
And we learn that she has some kind of privilege. We don't really know what it is necessarily, just that she's from Japan, she's very tech-savvy, and we'll find more about her lore later. But seeing her influence, it's very clear that her problem is not within her privilege. The only way for them to enter this palace is to put on some really nice clothing, which is very frustrating because obviously that's the last thing Kimiko wants to be expected to do. You know, as a woman, like, of course, getting to look good is the furthest thing from what a warrior should be doing. So the fact that this is, like, her swallowing her pride to have to do this thing just makes her even more of a hero, and I really like that. When they finally find this basement that leads to this cave, which, by the way, I don't know what basement leads to such a huge cave. This looks like the dark pits of heck, honestly. Like, what the heck is going on? But having Jack get there late is not that big of a deal because he's going through a lot. He's got a headache. I don't even know what to say. Wu Ya's just bothering him as she does this whole episode. And Kimiko and Jack are the only ones able to get to the Golden Tiger Claws first. While this is going on, we find out that Raimundo has a bet with both of the boys that she probably won't be able to win, but we don't actually get to know that. We just know that he's betting on her, and it's really funny. But the red is a really good theme, especially considering Kimiko is the fire character. This is so cool that we actually get an established moment where we see the fire. As she struggles to concentrate, the Shengong Wu seems to be back into evil hands like she had earlier in this episode, but then she sticks it out and goes through the showdown as normal, and since Jack is such a big idiot, he's able to lose his own patience, which is something she's able to overcome, and she actually steps on him, almost murdering him, which, by the way, this is a very intense action scene. Can't believe it goes the way it does. And she finds herself listening back to Master Feng's words.
You must drown out all distractions, quiet the storm of your mind. Only then will you achieve absolute focus.
With finally an intended win, which is so exciting for her because, you know, obviously we see her as kind of the underdog in this group of boys, but we could see that she not only can pull her own weight, but is a lot more stronger than some of the other monks. We learn that Raimundo was actually betting on her the whole time, which is actually really sweet, like such an unnecessary comedy beat that just shows more about his character. I like that the show is just so true. The character's like positive attributes, you know, like usually cartoons would just throw it away just to get a good joke in or something, but they actually stick to their guns and let a comedy beat go by if it just means making a character look good, which is something I personally love about this show. So the boys learned a little bit more about girls, and Kimiko learned a little bit more about herself, which is a really nice episode, considering it's only the third in existence. Yeah, this is a big deal. In the end, we get a little bit of a hint toward a larger plot. Well, it seems like Jack's whole plot is just a joke or something just ridiculous. It turns out to be a bigger part of Wuya's plot in order to take over the world. In the end, this girl named Kat Nappe, she does have a few subplots throughout the next couple episodes, so it's definitely interesting to meet her and only get a taste of what she has to offer. All around, though, full episode of Xiaolin Showdown. It's really good, and the way they portray Kimiko's journey is just so impressive. One of the other interesting things I found about Xiaolin Showdown, which is very perfect in topic of this video, Xiaolin Showdown was one of the few cartoons that were action series at the time that really appeared to girls. A lot of girls were watching almost more than guys, especially in competition with shows like Ben 10, Pokemon. Like, Xiaolin Showdown offered a really unique feminine perspective somehow. And what's this tied to? Probably the show's creator, Christy Hoy. So she created Xiaolin Showdown, developed the whole pilot for 3 years, and then yeah, the entire series was developed by her. However, her two co-executive showrunners, both males, so that could also kind of lean into the territory of the sexism part. It's back and forth with how Kimiko is portrayed as a female character because, it passes the Bechdel test, as in most of the time she's not talking about other boys, she's only talking about her goals and aspirations, so it doesn't really on paper count as sexist, but all the references in this episode to the boy's perspective on her seems to come across from a place of ignorance. But is ignorance and sexism different? Yeah, I definitely think they are. See, Kimiko holds a lot of power within this group. She's not only frustrated and emotional a lot of the times, she's just straightforward, passionate, aspirational, and even has some controversial opinions throughout the series. For example, when Omi was going to take toward the dark side, Kimiko was one of the people that was trying to talk him into lying for the squad. Very complex character choice that I think is very interesting and makes the characters a lot more four-dimensional, you know? So while I feel like this is like a very sexist episode and some jokes come out of a place of misogyny, you can't argue that they portray ignorance a lot better than they produce sexism. We're almost making fun of Omi throughout this episode, seeing as he is the most ignorant character, taking on this plotline against Kimiko, and it is very infuriating both as a viewer and Kimiko to watch her go through all these sexist remarks and doubts through the Shaolin process, but Master Feng here is the wisest, and he's able to pick apart Kimiko's flaws, not from just the perspective of being a woman, but focused on concentration. Like, her true character flaw is her lack of concentration, not necessarily her emotions or anything in between. In this episode, she deals with a perfectly grounded, sexless goal, trying to clear her mind and focus on the task at hand. And despite all the distractions that try to shadow her at this Shaolin temple, can she really rise above it and actually find her true power, putting sex and character relationships, even the fight between good and evil aside. This show is all about discipline, the relationship to oneself, and how sometimes working in a group of other people can sometimes make it even harder. It's ultimately a lesson in friendships and group dynamics and just how to work as a team. And in order to do that, it's understanding each other's flaws and positives. With Kimiko's not having anything to do with her actually being a girl, but it's more so this character-driven episode disguised with sexism as the obstacle the main characters have to overcome, especially Kimiko. And luckily by the end of the episode, the boys kind of learn how to take a hint from her and understand their differences are actually a means of making them all stronger as a unit. This not only helps the boys, but it also can empower Kimiko to use her individualism to save the team in scenarios where maybe the other boys can't. And I always find that to be really cool. When you think it's like a kid's show for boys, then see that it's a lot more girls drawn to it, you notice that there's a little bit more depth there. These jokes come up every so often for the rest of the series, but none really as prevalent as it does in this specific episode, which makes me feel like my theory is correct and that it's not just about the characters or writers of the show even being sexist, but portraying sexism in a way that's kind of a blanket for something even deeper, something that kids' cartoons of the 2000s did just so well. And Tangled Web is one of the best episode examples of this experience. So if you guys haven't seen Xiaolin Showdown, make sure you get on that because it's a very interesting show, with very generic plot lines and tropes that have a level of depth that actually distract it from all of its other competitions. Its emotional clarity and structured journey to find Shengang Wu disguise itself as a simple action-adventure show when really it's trying to provide both commentary and obstacles that kids this age watching would go through.
Just get us on the range, Dojo, and we'll do the cow roping. What?
I think he means get us close and we'll find it.
So why didn't he just say it?
Clay Bailey is a southern gentleman from Texas. This starts to sound like a dating profile. He's the only American Shaolin monk in the main group, and is known for having, like, insane sayings and funny metaphors that all relate to Texas somehow. I feel like he's related to Sandy Cheeks. The character that gets the most family representation, like, we see his dad, we see his sister, but other than that, he's got, like, the least amount of speaking lines, and sometimes the cast even borderline makes fun of him for his American ways. They really don't say that exactly, I'm just making that up. Surprisingly enough, he's one of the most lovable characters, having the fewest showdowns out of all the monks in the entire series, which is kind of crazy. But today I want to get over his most influential episodes in the Xiaolin Showdown series, starting with the first season. I also found some really cool tidbits and secret story beats for this episode. So why don't we get into the Apprentice of Earth, Clay Bailey.
Well, at least I ain't as slippery as goat drool on an oil slick.
Yeah, and I'm not the one yellower than a slice of Auntie Clarabelle's lemon silk custard pie.
Will you two please stop abusing the English language?
So the second episode ever of Xiaolin Showdown is called Like a Rock, and immediately they went from Omi's pilot to Clay's second episode.
Well, he's breathing. I'm guessing he's alive.
The least represented character in the whole show is getting the second episode. Very confusing, but I'm going with it. One of my favorite parts in this show is when we get to see the monks training. I don't know why, it just feels so heroic to see them do their martial arts thing in the temple. This is the first time in the show we actually see them training and like how they actually get physically fit for fighting evil, and it's very interesting because in this one, it's whoever captures the dog through the end of the obstacle course first, and Omi does a phenomenal job hooting and hollering his way through. And fun fact, this part's actually like in the Xiaolin Showdown DS video game when you're learning how to figure out the moves for the characters, and it's cool to go through the whole obstacle course. It definitely fleshes out the world a lot more than you would think. Omi is tested when Clay just straightforward turns around, doesn't do any of the obstacle stuff, and takes the dog.
You are supposed to go run and jump and kick.
Well, I didn't much see the point of all that hooping and hollering so long as I got the dog.
Raimundo calls this old man kung fu, which Master Feng walks in on, and it's so awkward. Can you imagine insulting an older person, like, right in front of them? Oh, so embarrassing. So this sets up the moral for the whole episode, which is that you fight smarter, not harder, which is interesting because obviously Omi is used to fighting harder, and Clay is working a little bit smarter. But I can't help but feel bad for Clay. He's the only one coming from America, from Texas, and of course the other monks view him as, like, a overweight southern boy that they don't really take seriously, and that's how this whole episode goes. It almost feels like bullying. We get to go into the vault for the first time and physically see where the Shengangwu are stashed, which I actually really think is awesome. And since Clay did the best in the training competition, he gets to use the Eye of Dashi, which, if you remember, the first episode has the Eye of Dashi, the Mantis flip coin, and the two-tongue tunic, and everybody but Omi gets a Shengangwu, which is fair, Omi. They just got here. You're so not new to this. And plus, everybody needs to catch up. So, he's already pretty jealous. Omi has, like, older brother syndrome at this point.
I should be the first to use it.
Fighting over a Shengangwu? Are you two trying to start a Xiaolin Showdown?
Meanwhile, Jack is enjoying himself in Paris, France with the third arm sash Shengangwu, which essentially just gives you a third arm. You wear it around yourself, and it's kind of cool. It's very weird, though. I didn't think Xiaolin Showdown would be the show to, like, just randomly have Shengangwu appear, but they do, and sometimes you don't get an explanation, don't know where it came from. It's just kind of there. I mean, obviously, if Jack just got it, why wouldn't the Warriors be there? I don't know. He somehow got this. We learn that this mime actually has superpowers somehow and is just a real mime. I don't know. It's magic that doesn't have to do with Shengangwu, just making the world a little bit more complicated for no reason, but hey, I'll get over it.
We are trapped. We cannot get out.
Very silly. Hey.
And yeah, the Fist of Tebagong is revealed in this episode, and if you could recall this show, Clay actually uses this Shengangwu a lot in the series, so it's kind of cool. It's his first episode with it. The rest of the adventure takes place on the Shengangwu location, which is actually kind of interesting. Jack shows up with his jackbots, and the monks show up trying to take him down, and everybody is on a race to find where this fist is. The monks split up from Clay pretty quickly, which I feel horrible about. I feel like they just don't like him because he's weird, and I don't know why. Like, I feel like Clay is definitely the underdog from the start, which is kind of crazy. After making fun of him, they kind of get their karma when the mime traps them in an invisible box, and Clay is just, like, not understanding until Kimiko shows him her PDF. Now, it's all up to Clay to get this Shengangwu while these guys are stuck in a box, and it's just so funny to think that they do not believe Clay is capable. Like, what do they think he did to get here? Like, so Clay uses his knowledge to get the mime to beat himself up. Something that is very quick, and it's like, wow, they kind of solved it really quickly. I mean, Omi, Raimundo, and Kimiko need to get out of the box. Once the monks get out of the box, it's almost too late. Clay comes head-to-head with Jack Spicer, and all the monks have pretty much given up right away.
I accept your challenge.
Come on, guys, so rude. The challenge is to catch this bird that's just, like, flying around. Which, by the way, I don't know how the animation gets more impressive here. It's such a boring idea for a showdown, but hey, at least the ground's lifted up? I don't know. This is the first time we see the warriors in their robes, which is kind of cool. Clay ends up pulling through, which is really cool. It kind of reminds me of the tortoise and the hare storyline, given that this already happened at the beginning of the episode, and it happened once again at the end of the episode. It's just never underestimate your opponent, and they underestimated their own teammate.
What's he doing?
If I had to guess, flower arrangement.
This does not inspire confidence.
Which I feel like is negative on their part, but hey, they're kids growing up and learning, and honestly, this is a really nice lesson to learn that you have to trust one another, and like, even if you don't think somebody else's methods are completely intact, Clay clearly knew what he was doing in his own right, and I love that. I love that lesson in this. And at this point, we have a total of 5 Shengangwu in the universe. It's so exciting to just see this grow. Of course, the Shaolin monks are the ones with all of them. The man who storyboarded this episode's name is Tim Eldred, and it's really cool to actually look at these storyboards and see how the show came together.
He implies Clay is like an old man doing kung fu.
Omi, ixnay on the easing tay.
Is there something funny about old men and their kung fu, young monk?
Master Feng.
You do recall, Omi, that the oldest oak in the grove is by far the strongest, yes?
And this show was the first show that this animator did that was not wholly original. It wasn't based on a film, comic book, or toy line. It was just 4 kids learning martial arts, which he talks about in his website. He met the producer Eric Radomski, who is an alumni of the Batman animated series, and he got him this job, which is actually really cool. This whole first season was actually split by 3 different directors, and Tim Eldred was one of them, so he must have really known what Xiaolin Showdown needed to set up as. They would do the basic premise of the show, figure out all the story beats, and have a bunch of different animators come in and do different storyboards, which is interesting that they were able to get such consistency for this episode. Kinda random, but this guy ended up doing Dragon Tales, that preschool kids show. Really funny to think about. The way he talks about this episode specifically is saying that, like, since the scripts were already really funny on their own, written by Bill Motz and Bob Roth, who developed the first season, it felt like instead of polishing turds, like making bad scripts good, it felt like it was already taking good scripts and launching them off like rockets. My favorite part of this animatic is like looking into the locations we know so well, like the vault, for example. Look how cool that is. Oh, and the way that they direct action scenes like the showdowns themselves. Like, it's just so interesting. Shout out to Tim Eldred for all these amazing drawings and directing this whole episode. It's just so cool to see behind the scenes, especially for a show that's so underutilized or under-recognized, that is.
Oh, all right, I'm up.
Oh, give me a home. Yeah, where the buffalo roam. Ho, ho, and the deer and the antelope play. Oh, where seldom is heard. Someone play maracas?
So Clay is featured in more than one episode of Xiaolin Showdown Season 1. If anything, he has 2, which each of the monks pretty much has, and then they have a couple group episodes. It's interesting how they divvy up the responsibilities of each cast member. The next episode we're going to look at is called Big as Texas. Now, fun fact, actually, this is the first time in the series we have a family relative come onto the show. And it's, of course, Clay is the one that's introducing this concept. Very interesting.
Have you seen Clay? I have a surprise visitor for...
Sweet yellow rose of Texas, boy.
Daddy?
I do like it because it like brings us into America, the Texas world, because obviously we don't usually go to America in this show, which is a very unique thing about it. So the fact this episode has it is interesting. Yeah, a lot of Shengang Wu are distributed, and the Golden Tiger Claws are still lost if you have to keep track. Instead of training, this one actually starts out, Raimundo's actually trying to play a prank on Clay, which is so funny. He fills his hats with 10 gallons of milk just to mess with Omi.
Only 9.5 gallons. You get a free hat.
Because as you could tell, Omi is very uncultured and an orphan, so he doesn't really know much of what goes on in the real world. This prank ends up with Clay looking like a girl just when his dad shows up to the Shaolin Temple. I'm going to tell you right now, the star Hanabi is on his chest, and it's not always apparent because they're trying to make it just like sneakily blend in, and it's like a reveal later, but it is cool that it's just casually here. Dojo comments on it, but doesn't really recognize it. This is when the Orb of Tournami, Omi's special Shengang Wu, is revealed. And it's funny that it's like Clay's episode of all things, like that's so specific. They end up going to, like, Italy, and Jack gets to it first, with Clay physically assaulting him just to impress his father.
What are you, some kind of ladies' knitting club? Just get in there and hog-tie that runt.
Yes, sir.
Hey!
Clay has a lot of daddy issues, and that's very interesting for his lore. We just learned that he's like a rock and cares about his father's opinion. He doesn't want to show up like a girly girl, which I guess is how people in America act. I feel like that must be Christy Hoy's interpretation, because it is kind of relevant to our culture. All the monks are pretty upset with Clay for just running in and acting on impact, when really he should be strategizing. They end up losing the orb to Jack Spicer, and, you know, their team is just falling apart already, like episode 8, and they're not working out. Come on. The monks miss Clay, which is a nice contrast to the first episode, because clearly they just thought he was a dope from Texas, and now they're actually getting to know him. I like that the relationship is getting solid. And Clay at this point isn't a monk anymore. So it's crazy to think about that he wasn't a monk at one point. But, you know, just because it was one scene doesn't mean it's not true. So they show up to Clay's home in Texas, confront him, and tell the dad that this Lone Star on his chest is a Shengang Wu. So Dojo was right for figuring it out. We kind of get a little bit of the lore that the Shengang Wu are hidden just all around the world, and Dojo just happens to have been there when it was buried.
The Lone Star has been in the family since the first settler dug it up right here back in 1849.
Yeah, but who do you think buried it back in 549?
Of course, the dad feels ownership for this because they dug it up, but they don't acknowledge that, you know, somebody built it years before. Kind of reminds me of like the Pilgrims and the history of Thanksgiving, you know? Like we just ended up taking their land and celebrating that. Didn't even talk about the fact we took it from other people. That's such a funny like comment on American culture too, since that is in our history. That's like how we are. The monks end up staying at Clay's ranch house for quite some time, and it's really cute seeing them switch to cowboy clothes, with Kimiko having cowgirl clothes. The rest of the episode, Omi is just trying to milk a cow, which is crazy that that's his only plot line. Kimiko and Raimundo are wrestling in some horses with Clay, and yeah, nobody's really comfortable with the Texas lifestyle. Even Kimiko pulls up her cell phone and is like bragging about it.
Keiko? Kimiko, I totally caught a cow. Can you believe it?
I love Kimiko so much. I don't know why. It's just so funny to see her still working with technology in this farm. Jack ends up getting to Clay's dad before Clay can actually prove he's a man, which, by the way, yeah, the dad insists that the only way Clay can get this Star Hanabi is if Clay can prove he is a man and allow it to be passed on from a different generation. And that's kind of cool, I guess. I don't know. It's more of the idea that it's like tradition and like upholding tradition. I don't know. That's a cool thing, I guess. So while Clay is trying to prove himself, Jack Spicer fully grabs the dad, and of course, Clay's daddy issues come to light. Next thing you know, Jack Spicer uses the Orb of Toonami against the entire crew and almost flooding the entire state of Texas, which you can't convince me that has actually happened. I know it's a cartoon, but this is getting a little ridiculous. They lose the star in the ocean, and that leads to Clay and Jack getting into a Xiaolin Showdown, which is always fun. So far, Clay is 2 for 2 in Xiaolin Showdowns because it's this giant stack of hay, and they have to ride through it to get the Star Hanabi. The dad is really obnoxious this whole time. He's like full-on stage mom, crying at Clay as he's trying to get the Shengang Wu, and this is like one of the longest showdowns so far because this just keeps going.
No time to dilly-dally, son. Get in there.
With Clay actively trying, but messing up at every source of the way. It pretty much is a metaphor for like the more he listens to his dad, the less he's become a man. So he starts ignoring him and following his own instinct and winning the showdown, with the monks celebrating, but kind of disappointed because they know that Clay might have to stay behind. Until Clay's father gives him permission to stay a Shaolin monk, and it's great. It's nice to know that this actually worked out in the end, and I wish real parents were like this. But unfortunately, they're a lot more stubborn than you would think. It's Clay's dad in a good light, and just watching Jack fail is just great. It's so interesting because it's like the only time I think I've ever seen Jack use the Orb of Toonami. Like from this point on, these season 1 Shengang Wu are pretty standard for the monks. Like Omi has the orb, Clay has the Fist of Tebagong, Kimiko uses the Star Hanabi, and Raimundo gets his Sword of the Storm. And it's really cool the way they divvy it up like that. Later on in the 3rd season, they get another Shengang Wu, but we'll save that for later. But yeah, sweet episode. This one's a lot more fair to Clay. I feel like the first one was just straightforward bullying, and this is like actually all of them appreciating one another, and that's cool. I like that. So all around, I guess this show wouldn't be as diverse or well-rounded without a soft-spoken country character like Clay Bailey. He really makes the show feel like it's a lot more fun and grounded than it sets out to be, with these magical elements having such a hard time being relatable. Clay is one of them, and I feel like I remember all kids talking about Clay being their favorite, maybe because of the Fist of Tebagong or just even owning Earth. He's got some confidence that you can't find in any of the other monks, and at least he's humble and admits when he's wrong. He doesn't have as many negative character traits as the rest of the monks, and we don't really notice it because of the fact he's always put in the background or given the extra episodes. So poor Clay, I am on your team. Don't forget Clay Bailey for president, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again next time.
I am sorry, Raimundo, but you have proven that you are not yet ready to move on.
If that's the thanks I get for trying to save his neck, fine. Won't happen again.
When we talk about betrayal in kids' television, it usually ends up being one of two things. A main character turning their back on their friends to accomplish some selfish goal, or a main character that turns their back on themselves, which is just as betrayal given. In a way, Xiaolin Showdown does both those things, but yet neither of them. It's kind of weird because the main characters in this show are tied equally between 4. Is it really equal? Not really. Omi kind of gets a lot more plot lines throughout the series than all the other characters, so it's kind of a unique case. But the argument is that Raimundo, one of the 4 monks, makes a really life-altering decision, one that has not affected anybody as much as any other character. This is what makes Xiaolin Showdown one of the most interesting shows of all time.
I'm sick of this place. I never should have left Brazil.
Raimundo's turn to the dark side, it's a slow building, larger arc that technically changes the events of Xiaolin Showdown forevermore. Raimundo tends to be the joking character, not taking anything seriously, almost out of like deflection to keep his emotions deep down, and it always ends up biting him in the butt, literally so much in season 3, and it sets up this cycle of selfishness that ends up translating to full-on evil, breaking the bounds of what it's like to be a good character versus an evil character, something that Xiaolin Showdown likes to explore a lot, always ignoring the central plot of the episode to do his own thing. One of the most noticeable moments is when he loses a wind Shengangwu, which is his own element, to the evil villain in episode 5. Episode 5 is called Shen Yibu, and it's when essentially Raimundo feels so much shame toward his failure that he devotes himself to try to make up for it and learn all the rules that come with future Shengangwu, which is a really interesting and nice character moment for him. Although I would argue he kinda does this out of selfishness, isolating himself from the rest of the monks. Like sure, in the end he comes out on top, wins the Xiaolin Showdown against Tubby Mora, and all lessons are learned.
Should have done your homework.
But really, it's just his own private journey that he refuses to let the other monks in on. And this pattern doesn't really end. When Raimundo goes through stuff, he keeps it within himself, not sharing it with the other monks. This character flaw shapes a lot of his plot lines throughout the entirety of season 1, slowly building to a 4-part episode in which he turns the tables on everybody.
I didn't know you could do that.
No, you didn't.
At first, this didn't air as a 4-part episode. No, so the season 1, episode 12, Mala Mala Zhang, is about this giant major villain that we've been waiting all season on expecting comes to life. And this guy is made out of all Shengangwu, and he is all-powerful, known as the biggest villain so far.
Mala Mala Zhang is an ancient demon warrior, powerful, deadly, and invincible.
Cool.
And they committed to this even after the show moved on past this villain. Literally, he is the final boss of the Xiaolin Showdown video game, which, oh my god, that's a whole conversation in itself. But the point is, he's seen as a really intense character. But the episode stays to this Monster of the Week 20-minute plot. So while we're waiting this entire season to see who Mala Mala Zhang is, have him finally come to life, there's something a little bit more important that comes out of the episode, is that the true villain isn't necessarily Mala Mala Zhang, but it's Raimundo. Oh yeah. So the Mala Mala Zhang episode is all about the 4 monks dealing with this giant impeding danger that even Master Feng is too scared to talk about. It feels like it's all about Omi's episode because he's the one that loses the heart of Zhang and makes this character come to life.
Omi, which Shengangwu did you lose?
The heart of Zhang.
But that means the end of life as we know it.
By the end of the episode, they finally defeat him, but Raimundo is the one we shine a spotlight on. Why? Because Master Feng told all the monks to retreat and ignore Malamaljong while he defeated them. But the only reason that didn't work out is because one monk decided to do his own thing, escape from the hideaway, and actually try to save Master Feng. This seems like a heroic act, but really it's a selfish act. Not one rooted in being a good person, but rooted in thinking you know what's best. And oh my god, all of the fallout from this one decision that Raimundo makes is so intense that it vibrates across all characters, even overshadowing who we thought was the main character, Omi. And this has so many big lasting effects on the rest of the series that it needs to be talked about a lot. Bringing us to Season 1, Episode 13, In the Flesh, the season finale. So after Malamaljong ended, episode 12, it actually goes on past that into episode 1 of season 2, and then episode 2 of season 2. So this is no just simple arc. And the fact that they don't say part 1 or part 2 like they do from some of the later specials is kind of crazy. It's almost like it's a 4-part arc hidden in plain sight, which I really like that they tricked us like that. For some reason, that's a cool trick. Malamaljong ends with Raimundo being the only one that doesn't rise to apprentice, which is actually kind of a big deal. All because of Raimundo's decision, he's the only one that can't move up.
This is a path Raimundo must walk alone.
He ends up walking out of the vault dramatically, and that ends the episode, making it clear that this is a 2-part endeavor. Last episode, Wuya fled the scene once Malamaljong wasn't working out, so her and Jack Spicer have a lot of tension with her, like, begging to be taken back, but Jack clearly is already moved on. He found something to detect Shengong Wu, which was Wuya's primary purpose in his life. He's, like, moved on because he doesn't need her anymore, and it's kind of a sad realization for her as he, like, uses this new tracker to get Shengong Wu on his own. Since Wuya is this transparent floating witch, she can't really do much, which almost makes her a lot less threatening than you think, until she decides to set her sights on somebody else. Not Jack Spicer. Somebody even smarter, somebody even more selfish. Raimundo. When Wuya can see that Raimundo is not feeling appreciated by the Shaolin monks, which it's kind of sad because it's like Omi just keeps talking down to him over and over again. Like,
But this clouded darkness has a sliver of lining, because I shall train you night and day.
Until I'm as good as you?
Oh, no, you'll never be that good. But with my guidance, you may become adequate.
I would run away if I were him too. It's so frustrating. He flees all the way back to his hometown in Brazil, only to be confronted by Wuya, whose tempting offer almost frustrates him because it just makes too much sense. It's everything he actually wants. It's not being a hero, but being selfish, giving in to his desires for pizza and video games, all at the sacrifice of his friends. And you know what? He hesitates for a while, and you feel bad for him a little bit until he just completely flees the scene. Then you just assume everything is going to go back to normal. The new Shengong Wu, the reversing mirror, reveals itself, which is a really interesting Shengong Wu, allowing the ability to reflect any power that another Shengong Wu has. So it leads to a lot of really interesting scenarios. At first, it doesn't seem like a super impressive Shengong Wu until Raimundo inserts himself into the battle, fighting Jack Spicer for it. And you know what? It becomes a huge deal. Even though it seems like a normal showdown, it's halfway through the episode, so you're kind of like, wait, why didn't anything resolve necessarily? And once Raimundo gets this reversing mirror, he decides to turn against all of his friends and just join Wuya.
And you're not even a Shaolin apprentice.
You're right, Omi. I'm not. So, where do you want him?
Huh? What?
Pardon me? Hey!
Oh boy.
Given into the temptations that he was offered earlier. Ugh. And it's so sad and heartbreaking watching the monks just not know what to say, and even Jack Spicer laughing at them for his turn on them. Immediately, Raimundo isn't super in a good mood about this. He almost regrets it immediately, but you can't really tell. He's good at prioritizing his own needs above other people, and once he sees that Wuya keeps his best intentions, he goes full in on the plan. The heartbreaking part is when he actually breaks into the Shaolin Temple. Omi is kind of in denial throughout this whole episode, thinking that Raimundo can never possibly do something. And you see that that's kind of what makes him a good character, is he's so uplifting and optimistic about everybody's intentions. It almost invites a lot of good energy. But Raimundo is the opposite of him in this scenario, where it's like they're fighting back to back. So Raimundo pretty much assaults all the monks trying to get the serpent's tail. Only one Shengong Wu, which is kind of weird, but there's a really awesome action sequence. Up until this point, we only see the main characters fighting villains, but to see them fighting each other just enters a whole new vibe.
Raimundo, I am starting to think you are not enacting some sort of secret elaborate plan.
Nothing escapes you, Omi.
Not even you.
Wrong.
Once Omi finally realizes that he's up to no good, he tries to take him down, but the monks lose all around, and it's just so sad. There's a depressing shot of them looking into the distance, and oh my god, it breaks my heart.
Raimundo really has betrayed us.
Master Feng, out of everybody, is just as disappointed and upset. He never meant to push Raimundo to do such negative things, but you know what? It's true. It's dark and it's real, you know? Like, sometimes the miscommunication between adults and kids is a big reason to kind of turn your back, and Raimundo really doesn't hold back. He gets the Shengong Wu all together for Wu Ya's plan, which we don't really understand until we see it later. The reversing mirror allows the effects of Shengong Wu's to be reversed, right? So since the serpent's tail allows you to turn into a ghostly form and go through objects and walls, as they had it in the episode My Homie Omi revealed, now they're using it as a reverse engineering moment and actually turning Wu Ya into her physical form, which turns out to be way worse than Mala Mala Zhang. So while we're waiting this whole season to see what goes on with this monstrous villain, it's defeated pretty quickly, and Raimundo is actually enacting an even worse villain, not only Wu Ya, but himself. So Wu Ya and him make this undeniable duo that Jack Spicer and Wu Ya could never have made, combining both Shengong Wu and finally taking over the entire world, which is ruling the world. It like almost takes away all the environmental causes in the earth. Wu Ya starts this whole palace on her own, and just, it is the beginning of so much more than we're ever ready for.
This is bad. Very, very bad.
If I had hair, it would be standing on end.
If I had boots, I'd be quaking in them.
Wanna borrow mine?
And that is how our season 1 ends, on a huge cliffhanger that we didn't expect to be pulled out in the last episode. But hey, it's interesting, guys. I love the way this whole thing pans out and sets us up for an even bigger betrayal. And the next 2 episodes are all we have to figure out whether Raimundo's going to make the right decision or not.
From now on, you can find me on the Halen side. Golden Tiger Claws!
Leading to so many more events and something we can't turn our back from. Probably one of the best season finales I've ever witnessed, because honestly, it's just so impressive how they put it together. All expectations of a normal 2000s cartoon are diverted and spread across 4 episodes that don't exactly lean the story to be taken in a normal way. So not only did they have this one character make the turn of a lifetime, but they had this lore remodeled for the rest of its show. And yeah, it just kind of breaks my heart seeing Omi, Raimundo, Kimiko, and Clay break up in such a enormous way that we don't even have time to focus on the emotions of it all, because all of their actions are leading to everything going on. And if there were ever a arc in Xiaolin Showdown that could last as long, it's only this one, Raimundo. Even when Omi turned evil, it only took up like 3 episodes. But this one, it's just so hard to get over, and the betrayal you don't only feel as a monk, but you feel it as the viewer, and everything about it is just full-on heartbreaking. But hey, that's what makes these shows so interesting. That's what makes 2000 cartoons so much better than most media you could come across, even nowadays. Like, these kinds of things are so good. It reminds me of Teen Titans when they did that whole multi-episode story arc with Beast Boy, and then they had one with Raven. Like, they really got to explore a lot. And Xiaolin Showdown only had 52 episodes, but they used them really well, especially given that, like, we're focused on looking for these Shengong Wu, when really the plot is within the characters and their relationship to good and evil, and what defines good and evil, and wow, oh gosh, it's just so chilling to think about. So yeah, if you really want a good multi-episode story arc, definitely revisit the 12th and 13th episode of the first season of Xiaolin Showdown, and the first 2 of season 2, because you're not gonna get any story that makes sense in one of those episodes. Like, you really need to watch all 4 to get this image. Thank you so much for watching my Xiaolin Showdown videos, and for more 2000s cartoons, don't forget to check out Johnny Toons, or...
You know what's next.
I challenge you to a Xiaolin Showdown.
Against your 2-ton tunic in a race over this here...
Xiaolin Showdown is more than just a TV show about 4 kids trying to collect magical Shengong Wu across the world. Yeah, it is a comedy, it is a drama, and it is psychologically everything in between, with its most important component being the center of its entire universe, a Xiaolin Showdown. What's a Xiaolin Showdown, you may ask? Stop asking questions! No, I'm just kidding. It's essentially a dispute, a disagreement between 2 people who can wager a little bit of their own power against another person, and the winner essentially takes all the power. The power in this context is Shengong Wu, and there's so much that goes into this. Not only are they the most important objects known to man, but these are psychologically stressful situations where 2 characters really have to fight to the limit. And Xiaolin Showdown does not just do normal showdowns. Like, it seems simple by nature, but there's times where these things go completely off the walls. Whether it's full-on breaking the rules of a showdown, having multiple people go against multiple other people at the same time, like, there's a lot of stuff that you never expect them to add into this. One of my favorite parts of all of this is just how they work the environment into the Xiaolin Showdowns. Like, not only are 2 warriors trying to settle a dispute, but when they decide on a game, it usually has to involve environmental changes. So it actually, the entire universe will bend itself to the Shengong Wu's will and actually help these warriors settle their argument, which is kind of an old-fashioned, like, duel type mentality, but it's still, they have such a modern view of it, especially for the 2000s. So yeah, not only do they have this entire show based on this, they just find new ways to mix it up season by season. And with only 52 episodes, there's over 100 different showdowns that take place. But hey, that's just a bunch of facts and hooey. Let's get into the real fun of it all, the top 10 best showdowns ever. And I'm talking about characters, what they wager, like the Shengong Wu, the showdown, and the context of the episode in which it happens. There's just so many moving pieces that make these a complicated duel, and I just really want to, like, make sure I tell you guys about the ones that matter the most. And make sure you stick around after, because I do want to break down 3 of the wackiest and weirdest ones that are ever to be out there by the end. But let's get into the top 10 right now.
Jack Spicer, I challenge you to a Xiaolin Showdown.
So number 10 is at the end of The Apprentice, Season 2, Episode 22. We've got Omi and Jack Spicer, probably the most common showdown fighters you will know. Jack Spicer wagers the Lotus Twister, and Omi wagers the Silk Spitter. The showdown starts with Jack and Omi getting their hands on the Monsoon Sandals, the ones that have the ability to stretch your legs out really wide, which is kind of unnecessary now that I'm thinking about it. And the entire theme of this episode is telling lies, essentially, like Omi's relationship with trust. And that's why it breached the top 10 for me, because it shows that Xiaolin Showdowns can actually be very psychological and actually be super important to fulfilling the entire plot of the episode. It's almost like it couldn't go on without it. Throughout the episode, Jack tries to be a Shaolin warrior and then lies about it. So this entire showdown is both of them admitting their flaws, giving out 2 truths and a lie, essentially. Remember that old workplace game where you tell a truth and a lie about yourself? That's kind of what this whole episode feels like. It's just a bunch of balloons, and when they get the answer wrong, it switches and pops the balloon, and when you get it right, you just survive. So it's kind of like a last man standing competition.
Truth or lie? Did you steal the Shengong Wu because you feared that you would fail at good, just as you have failed at evil?
Jack Spicer? Fail? Lie?
No! Truth! Truth!
and more truth.
Omi learns a little bit more about Jack and how he's pretending to be evil just to fit in, and that maybe approval is something more he cares about, which is so interesting. And the fact that the entire episode is wrapped around this very theme is really impressive. I just feel like, for me personally, this is one of the best showdowns in general. By the end, Omi wins because I guess what is really good is being honest and truthful, and Jack is still unable to do that, so his character falls to his doom. Kind of dark when you think about it, but all around, good showdown.
Dojo, I challenge you to a Xiaolin Showdown.
Number 9 for me is actually a really fun one. It's between Dojo and Wuya. Yeah, both of the ancient creatures that have transcended over hundreds of years to be in the current time have never really been involved in the showdowns before, so this is a really cool episode just in that uniqueness alone. It starts with Wuya actually trying to raid the temple and take all the Shengang Wu. Dojo ends up being the one to finally get his hands on the orb, and both of them are challenged to a showdown. At first, Dojo doesn't even want to do it, which I think is super funny, but there's like no real reason he can say no to it.
It says right here that a mystical dragon can be Wooless in a showdown if he has no criminal record.
Well, there was no convictions.
Since Dojo doesn't have any Shengang Wu, he's able to bet himself, which is kind of interesting. And yeah, the whole episode reminds me of Waluigi's pinball from Mario Kart, honestly. It's just the lights and sparking colors are really cool. I love this showdown. Finally seeing all 4 Shaolin warriors watching a showdown go down is actually really cool, and not something we're going to ignore forever. This entire episode is about Dojo anyway, so it's nice that he gets to be the one to solve his own plot, as opposed to the episodes before, like Night of the Sapphire Dragon, when he just takes down the dragon. Or the one where he was locked in a cage. Actually, that one did turn out to have a showdown, but it wasn't him being himself. This one is really authentically Dojo, just like being the klutz he is in the showdown. And even bigger plot twist, he ends up losing, which you do not see coming. Wuya just straightforward cheats, but I guess that's how you have to win a game where you have to get to 1,000,000 points. Can you imagine actually how long that would take? It's insane to think about. It doesn't even end up being like a bad situation, because even though he loses, Wuya takes the wrong Shengang Wu anyway, which I don't know how the mystical rules allowed that to happen, but we're gonna move on from that.
Panda Bubba, I challenge you to a Xiaolin Showdown.
The next showdown is from a Kimiko episode, Season 2, Episode 17, The Return of Panda Bubba, where we actually get to meet Kimiko's father, and he is being controlled by Panda Bubba. The really cool thing about this one is it's also a very game-like showdown. We've talked throughout the series about a game called Goo Zombies, or Goo Zombies 2, and it's just this game that Raimundo and Kimiko like to play, and they actually incorporate it to be the showdown. Kimiko wagers her Silk Spitter against Panda Bubba and his Shroud of Shadows, and they are fighting over the Zing Zombone, which actually turns a bunch of opponents into a zombie to work for you, which is actually kind of specific when you think about it. The reason I like this episode so much is because it's like Kimiko's plot actually defending her father, and like all she has to go through in this episode leading up to this, the emotional stakes just couldn't be higher, and I really love that. Not only that, it's just the aesthetic takes you to a completely different place than you're used to, like the video game world, and they have this nice glow around them that actually is reminiscent of the video game itself. They included this showdown in a level in the game, which I even find cool. Weirdly enough, this is actually one of the longer showdowns. Like usually they'd be about 2 to 3 minutes in like a normal episode. Sometimes you'd get like a very quick end or beginning of one, but this one just goes on for like 4 minutes, and that's not a big deal in retrospect, but there's only 22 minutes in an episode, so it kinda is a big deal. It makes sense though, because there is 3 levels and then a final boss battle that Kimiko and Panda Bubba have to go through, and while Kimiko is pretty much at the end the entire time, we're very worried that she's not going to win.
They're power-ups! Tango!
Meanwhile, all the monks are watching from the DS, or video game console, whatever it is, which is actually kinda cool. In the end, Panda Bubba actually loses to the boss, leading Kimiko to take home the win, and it's definitely one of her best wins, I feel like. One of the most interesting showdowns, and the fact that the setting is so unique, going places that we can never go in other shows, I don't know, I just like it a lot.
Well, looky here. A standoff.
Is actually going to be way bigger than you would expect. There is a showdown that actually takes place almost over the course of an entire episode. Isn't that insane? Yeah, 4 showdowns go on all at once, and it's pretty much just the entire second act of this whole thing. 7 to 8 minutes is all showdown, and it's every monk at once. So the context is the episode is about 5 Shengang Wu revealing themselves all at the same time, requiring all the monks to split up and get each individual one themselves. Jack ends up getting a bunch of people on his side and trying to cover as much ground as possible as well. This episode's cool because we get the Longy Kite, the Tongue of Sai Ping, the Lotus Twister, and the Sun Chi Lantern all revealing themselves at the same time, which has never been done before. Raimundo's showdown is hide and seek in the ocean, which is really cool. Omi's and Jack's is first one with a cup of water without spilling a drop at the end wins. Kimiko and Katnape have a race through the forest, and Clay and Tubimura just try to get to the tongue first. It's not on its own a lot of really interesting Xiaolin Showdowns, but the fact that they have 4 going on simultaneously is just so cool. We get like a plethora of Shengang Wu, which is so interesting for the first season. I feel like it makes it a lot more diverse to like get more Shengang Wu out there quick. Having Jack and Omi be in black and white is just straightforward the coolest part of the episode. Having this whole thing be about teamwork and the fact that they can't really work together super well is a great premise and a great reason to have these going on at once. The shots are just so interesting, and I've never seen such a good action platforming scene in any cartoon ever. I don't know why, I'm just so impressed by it. Seeing Tubimura and Clay being like doing like an overweight challenge, honestly, like trying not to break the ice, it's just ridiculous. And then even seeing the chameleon bot come back from the episode with Kimiko just to fight Raimundo is also kind of cool. It's just really good in the way it ends up. Actually, everybody loses except for Omi, having 4 Shengang Wu lost. Actually, technically 8, because the ones they wagered too, probably. Omi ends up having to save the day at the end of the episode, but it's just so cool that they managed to find an entire episode highlighting what's so cool about a Xiaolin Showdown. At first, I was like having trouble figuring out where to put this on the list, because it's kind of unfair to have 5 at once compared to the other entries in this, but you know what? It's unique, and the unique things about these Xiaolin Showdowns are always what stands out to me, and I can't believe how many times they varied this without me actually realizing it. Like, there's so many unique showdowns. This list is impossible. But yeah, this is definitely one of the most entertaining showdowns out of all of them. It's so hard not to talk about this one when you're talking about the Xiaolin Showdowns.
How did Chase get out?
What's going on? Well, you see, I came here to,
Take back the Shengang Wu.
what?
I challenge you to a Shaolin Showdown.
But
I wager the Shroud of Shadows. And you?
I wager the Orb of Tornat.
The next one is actually super cool because of the context behind it. It's Season 2, Episode 21, The New Order, and the whole episode is about the villains turning against each other, like Jack Spicer and Chase, and Omi basically gets a secret with Chase Young that is just so... that would just actually betray the monks, and Chase kind of insists on him keeping it, and makes this whole showdown as a performative way to prove to the monks that Omi is to be trusted, which is kind of messed up. Like, honestly, if you listen back to what I just said, it's so confusing. So it's the Mantis flip coin, and Omi has the Orb of Tornami, while Chase wagers nothing, and of course he just like doesn't need Shengang Wu. He talks about it all the time, but it's just such a cool showdown knowing that it's only for performative reasons, yet Omi's still trying, and the monks don't even know what's going on. Oh, Chase actually wagers the Shroud of Shadows in this. I was wrong completely. But seeing these two strong warriors fight against each other, it makes us actually see Omi as a really big threat to evil, and shows us that Chase Young is actually out to get this boy.
Tree.
Eating crackers!
Grasshopper doing dog paddle.
They have got to be making this stuff up.
Grasshopper doing dog paddle, right here in black and white, right next to Spider doing hokey pokey.
And it's so interesting to see this go down under those reasons. But yeah, the end of the second season just got so twisted with Chase Young. You could check out my other video I did on that. I did like the whole Chase Young saga in like a bunch of episodes, so please check that out. But yeah, overall, like it's just really an interesting way to end the episode. It's not even positive, it's just kind of off-putting as we see Omi walk out and lie to his friends. You never know what's going on with these showdowns, but the showdowns really do add like this kind of complicated lower subtext to everything the characters are going through, which is something I find the most interesting. The next one is actually another Omi one.
I challenge you, Jermaine, you, Jack Spicer, and you, Tubby Mora, to a showdown tsunami.
In the 23rd episode of Season 2, we have an episode called Something Jermaine. Jermaine is a character that comes up in the first season, My Homie Omi. Omi meets him in New York, and he actually comes back as a Shaolin warrior in this episode. The episode's context is really complicated because when he becomes a Shaolin warrior, Omi gets super jealous, and the two get really competitive with each other with this building tension of old friends not getting along anymore. It kind of like breaks your heart just to watch it. Jermaine goes under the guise of Chase Young actually being trained to fight Omi, which is a plot twist that you never see coming. The monks are basically out to get the golden finger, the Shengang Wu that allows time to freeze. And as Jack, Tubby Mora, Omi, and Jermaine get together, they all wager a Shengang Wu. Tubby Mora the Shroud of Shadows, and Jermaine the Lasso Boa Boa. And while the villains don't really last super long in this, it's kind of perfect because it's not about them anyway, so seeing them run off is actually kind of funny. But then Jermaine and Omi fighting is just so intense and sad because you know that they had such a good connection, so seeing them like really have to turn against each other and declare a winner is so important.
What is more evil than turning two friends against each other?
I think you did that. Why couldn't you have just been happy for me?
I was just not happy for me.
And the ending is really why I praise this one so much, because Omi straightforward gives up. He gives up in a showdown, which you'll never expect to see or ever happen again. So I love how they put this together in such a integral way. And even Jermaine realizes he's on the wrong side. So it's a super important act of justice that even Chase Young admits later is all a part of the plan, which I don't know if I fully believe, but it's still crazy that he pit them against each other. There's so many manipulation tactics that go on throughout this show, I don't even know what to say. Yeah, but all around, this one is just way too interesting not to talk about. Also, jousting? Like, that's a cool premise. Since they're in ancient Greece, they're running around on these carts with swords. It's like very medieval times in a really cool way. Like, they're really good at mixing up the theme, the setting, and it also brings us back to the fact that the location itself is almost giving the showdown. I almost feel like the warriors must have to have like a history lesson or something, because you must really need to know your environment to get a showdown going on like this.
According to the ancient scrolls, we have the right to challenge you for Omi's freedom.
And what do you wish to wager?
The only thing you'd be willing to play for, our eternal loyalty.
The next one is longer than usual, but it kind of makes sense because it's a 3-part episode. Finding, saving, and judging Omi is a 3-part season 2 finale that leads into the 3rd season, and it's just filled with drama, and Omi becomes evil in it. There's a lot of manipulation tactics, and the entire 3-part episode culminates in this final showdown in season 3, episode 1, Finding Omi. Nobody uses Shengang Wu in this one, which already off the bat makes it unique. It's a soccer game between Xiaolin and Heilin. Basically, the monks come together and challenge Chase Young for Omi's freedom. And so that's the only thing at wager here. And so they have a whole soccer team of each side. Whoever scores the most goals wins. And every character gets a chance to shine. At first, they're losing really badly, so it comes to be a very neck-and-neck situation with Heilin having 3 and Xiaolin having 0. And having Omi play on their side was such a power move that the monks did, which could be essentially the last time they ever work with Omi again. So the fact that this is like at stake is such a big deal. The entire world is on the line, and honestly, like, this was so close to being in the top 5, it's almost like I couldn't figure out the right one. Wuya's in the audience cheering the whole time, which I find really funny. And Chase has this unfair group of warriors that he raises out of his jungle cats, which can't be fair. It almost reflects the showdown we said earlier between Chase and Omi. Except this one is Chase giving a genuine effort and actually trying to get this showdown. But yeah, this is probably a lot of fan favorite when it comes to these showdowns, so I just had to put it on the list in terms of that too. Like, there was just so much interesting things going on in this show. The only episode that could compete with this is actually just a normal episode. Season 3, Episode 6, The Master, The Return of Master Monk Guan.
Raimundo, I challenge you to a Xiaolin Showdown.
So if you understand this entire show, you'll know why this is such an important episode, because basically, Raimundo spends a 4-part episode turning evil, and then in this, he just completely backtracks and becomes evil once again, when the monks are sent to a new Shaolin training center. Raimundo ends up raiding the temple and taking all the Shengong Wu from his own monks. Oh my gosh, they had a fight in the first 4-part episode between the monks and Raimundo, and it was, like, honestly heartbreaking. So to see this go down once again is so sad. It's over an entire bag of Shengong Wu, so there's so much at stake. Like, whoever wins is gonna get all this, you're telling me? That's crazy. Omi only has the gills of Hamachi, so he has to wager that, and Raimundo wagers his fancy feet, which is so rare. The fancy feet just, like, come in very minimally in this show, and it just allows you to run really fast. I feel like that is relevant and would just be more helpful than not. Master Monk Guan is supporting the monks throughout this whole episode, which kind of sucks because Master Feng never got to watch in on a Xiaolin Showdown, so this is kind of a crazy situation. And yeah, this entire episode is building up to Omi and Raimundo getting into another fight with each other, and it's never been this much tension. Like, they full on beat each other up. The stakes are intense. The water rises as they're in these, like, vacant pillars, and Hannibal Bean has essentially groomed Raimundo to fight for him, which is crazy. Turns out, even halfway through the battle, they bring the wager up even higher.
I accept your wager. Your misguided faith in the cheese ball is touching.
Which is very rare. Dojo has to bring out the rulebook to see if this is even possible to do, but they bring more Shengong Wu into the mix, just as Omi is, like, about to completely die. Like, Omi is beat up and so weak, and everybody else is like, what do we do about this? And you just feel bad because there's no way Omi's gonna win. He's just a flopping fish at a certain point. So Raimundo would have to go really easy on him in order to make this happen. And that's exactly what does happen.
God. Looks like you win.
So Raimundo ends up losing the entire showdown, allowing the monks to end up winning all the Shengong Wu. And it's so crazy how it all goes. It turns out to be a hoax from Raimundo to Hannibal Bean, which is actually kind of genius, and actually sets us up to set Raimundo up to be the warrior at the end of the series. A very cool thing to have him do, especially considering Omi is usually the leader or, like, the front man for all these showdowns. Like, having Raimundo be the one to fully take credit is really awesome. I love that they are able to give different characters the spotlight at different points, and this one just really resolves the episode in a beautiful way that I don't even know how to keep talking about.
Chase Young, I challenge you to a showdown.
A plain old regular showdown? We haven't had one of those in a long time.
Number 2, you'll find super surprising. We're going back to the second season again, which is crazy. It's definitely one of the best seasons for showdowns. But then again, it has 26 episodes and the rest have 13. So it's not like there's a lot of competition. In the episode, no Shengong Wu are wagered, because this episode is about Master Monk Guan. Basically, he sells dojo to Chase Young when we meet Chase Young for the first time. And Chase Young has the ability to turn into a lizard, but he only has this ability by eating dragons, which is dojo. So there's a lot more at stake than just Shengong Wu in this episode. And at first you're gonna think that it's the monks who have to get into this showdown, but no, it's Master Monk Guan. And because of all the history we learn about, actually adds so much to this showdown. It turns out these two used to be both Shaolin warriors and fighting for Shengang Wu until Master Monk Guan lost his sword. So once you know all that, you know that it's really important that they're not fighting with Shengang Wu, that this fire is going, the music in this is phenomenal. They have so many good action scenes that just only can remind me of like Dragon Ball Z by how fast they're going.
You cannot defeat me. Even the spear of Guan won't save you.
What makes a warrior strong is not the weapon, but the warrior holding the weapon.
And they even have like a little mirror trick going on halfway through it. All the monks are watching together once again, and even though it kind of doesn't have to do with them, the way this pans out is very important. Even Jack Spicer is rooting for the other team. I don't know, it's so hard to compare this to other ones because of the fact it's none of the main characters involved, yet it still involves them. It almost feels like watching a sport when you're like on a certain team, and even at the end, Chase just gives in and Master Monk Guan wins.
I see you now for what you are, and not for what you pretend to be. Repel the beast!
So it's definitely a good win for everybody all around. And that finally brings us to the #1 Xiaolin Showdown throughout the entire series.
It's our destiny. I challenge you to a 4-way tag team Xiaolin Showdown.
Fortunately, it's not super surprising. But before we get into that, I definitely want you guys to stick around after this because I have a few shout outs to showdowns that I think are just so cool. And even though they couldn't crack the top 10 by how good they were, we definitely need to give a mention because they're either wacky, confusing, or just straightforward awesome. So please stick around. So it should be no surprise that Season 3, Episode 13, Time After Time Part 2, the series finale of Xiaolin Showdown, has the best showdown. I mean, could you have it any other way, guys? Like, I can't imagine it not ending in a Xiaolin Showdown. This one is by far the longest showdown you get in the entire series. It almost takes the Royal Rumble premise where all 4 warriors are involved, but instead of being in their own individual showdowns, it's all together, and it's like a tag team showdown, which comes down to Raimundo and Hannibal Bean. The entire 2-part episode is like them traveling to and from different periods of time to try to figure out this old Shaolin warrior bloodline and who gets the Shengang Wu by the end of the show. So there's a lot at stake, and even having this take place in the very past, in a timeline where the Shaolin warriors almost lost to evil and it's in this whole dystopia, makes it super cathartic from the ground up. It's rescuing the princess from the top of the tower, so there's this giant tower that goes up to the sky, and all the villains in the entire series are involved. I mean, it's only a couple really important ones, but Master Monk Guan, Chase Young.
Hey, no fair! One player at a time!
So, we're cheaters!
Everybody who's like just so evil is fighting for the other team. And it takes forever to talk about which Shengang Wu are wagered in this because it is just straightforward ridiculous. At one point, Wuya, who is like the witch that we see in Season 1, like even further, brings in these demons, and it's like so clearly unfair to the Shaolin monks. It seems like they're going to lose at so many different points, with Raimundo even like falling to his demise. So crazy, but like the warriors come in clutch all together, and Omi comes in at the last second, which is cool because he's like kind of the main character, but even though Raimundo made the sacrifice. And in the very end, they save the princess, which is Dojo in a wig. It's super funny, and it just really encapsulates everything that's so good about Xiaolin Showdown.
My hero!
This celebratory like event where people turn against each other but finally come together at the end, like it's just such a beautiful idea to settle a dispute, a Xiaolin Showdown. Yeah, so it ends with the entire universe being broken and Omi accidentally opens 2 different time loops, which is kind of crazy, but we're not even gonna get into that. We're just talking about the showdowns. Point is, it's really cool. Okay, now we have to talk about some of the shout-out ones that didn't make the top 10, but is just cool anyway.
Mother?
For instance, there's one where Omi fights against his own mother. Yeah, there's a whole episode where Omi is trying to find himself, figure out where he came from, and actually quits being a Shaolin warrior to live with his parents.
Tonami against your lasso, boa. How'd you get my orb?
I went through your pockets when you were clipping your father's toenails.
In the end, the mom comes in, is kind of evil, and says that when he's an adult, he'll understand. She wagers her Orb of Toonami, and Omi wagers, and they fight for this entire slew of Shengang Wu. It's just so funny seeing it be like mother and son, and the way Omi talks about the whole situation.
There's nothing sweeter than a mother's love for her son. Tear him up, Mom!
Mother and son should not fight. It is not right.
I'm your mother. I tell you what's right.
It's just hilarious. Of course, Jack is rooting for the mom, which is even more off-kilter than you would expect. All of this is just so unexpected. And I think that's the best part of it all. Like, that showdowns don't have to be this serious psychological issue. It can also just resolve a simple dispute in an episode between mother and son. In the end, we learn that it's not even his actual mother, it's just a robot created, so it doesn't necessarily matter anyway. But the emotions are so high, it's hard not to talk about, okay? Like, it's so funny.
I challenge you to a Xiaolin Showdown trio!
And speaking of super unique showdowns, Season 3, Episode 11 is the last normal episode before the series finale where we had that best Xiaolin Showdown I was talking about. And this one is really unique because it's all the villains on their own against each other, all fighting for evil, mind you. They all have their own Shengang Wu. It's Chase, Jack, and Hannibal. It's kind of ridiculous. So Jack is actually portrayed by Kimiko in this moment, which nobody really knows, so it's kind of like a secret.
You can defeat them, Jack! I am sure of it! Kimiko does not stand a chance!
Why are you rooting for Jack?
No reason. Just like to go with the underdogs.
But it's still funny watching him get beat up by Chase and Hannibal. Like, Wuya is so confused when watching this because obviously the monks know it's Kimiko, so they're all just like, who are we rooting for? And yeah, it's just such a good episode to result in all these villains fighting against one another.
That Chase has girly hair. A real warrior shaves his head like me.
Ha! You could pour fertilizer on that head and nothing would grow.
And Jack starts using Chase and Hannibal's like resentment toward each other against him, which is actually really cool. And then by the end, Jack as Kimiko wins the showdown, and it's all for the cannon blaster, which is really cool. All around, just a good episode, good idea. Brings out a lot of old tension between Chase and Hannibal, and I'm just enjoying it.
Yes! All right,
Yeah, you go, girl! Boy.
And then we got one more that I think is really cool. It just has to be talked about. The Sands of Time episode from Season 2, Episode 8. In this, we are going for the Shengang Wu called the Ruby of Ramses. And Omi brings back old Omi with him using the Sands of Time, because Jack brings the old Jack, and the whole episode is about them getting to Shengang Wu first. It's just so crazy.
I can't find my keys!
Our third arm sash against your monkey staff!
Our Mantis flip coin against your thorn of thunderbolt! Or thunderbolt, actually.
So the Jack wager the Mantis flip coin and monkey staff, while the Omis wager the Thorn of Thunderbolt and the third arm sash. And the showdown is actually really cool too. Like, not only is it just weird because it's future and past selves fighting each other, but it's in this giant pyramid that is split into 3 separate levels. And all of them have to go through this maze and try to get to the end. With Jack even turning on his own counterpart. Like, they don't even get along the whole time. Omi and old Omi are really sweet together. I like watching them fight on the same team. But for the most part, like, it's just a really epic showdown that you can't not talk about that. You know, like, it's such a cool idea. that's the last showdown I really want to mention. Can you guys believe that there's this many diverse, confusing, like plot-driven showdowns in this show? Like, it's so interesting to think that like other shows do handle disputes, conflict, disagreements, but the fact that this show always ends in a formal showdown which actually has a formal winner is very interesting. It's very confusing to me why I like that so much. I feel like that's more of a reflection on what I enjoy in this show. But hey, like that's why I like it so much. It's a formal way to settle a dispute. And with these hugely important magical objects being the enticement of it all, like there's just so much going on at once. Not only is it the context, but it's also the characters, everything they're wagering, and even the environment around them that changes the future of how this all goes. And Xiaolin Showdown just does such a good job at making this work really well. But do you guys remember this? And like, what was your favorite showdown? Because there are so many we haven't talked about, and I can't even believe I narrowed it down to having 13 in this video.